Alright, in my recent drawer unit video I hand cut some splines into the mitres. I realised that I didn't fully explain the process that I went through, so this video I'm going to take you through the full process. You could say it's a bit of a tutorial, however remember that I'm not a professional woodworker, I'm just an amateur, and so therefore I'm sharing with you what I have learned. And here are the tools that I'm going to be using. A pencil, a ruler, a square, a multi-angle measuring ruler, a combination square, a marking knife, a marking gauge, a chisel, a mallet, a handsaw, and finally a flush saw. To make the joint I'm going to be using some scrap beech, and the spline is going to be out of this Iroko. Obviously to start we need a mitre joint. Okay, so the first step is actually doing a bit of measuring out, and that is to first of all measure the depth of the joint and also the thickness of the spline. The joint in this situation is quite thick anyway, so we're safe with it. But if it's a thin joint you may need to know exactly how far you can go, because you don't want the spline coming through, say, on this underside bit. So there I know I've got about 40 mils to play with, and the thickness of the superior is about 19 mil. So I don't want to be using the full thickness of the Iroko, maybe 3/4 of it. So my next step is to find the centre of the mitre, and that's so I can then work out how far apart I can make the spline. I do have this, which I bought recently, which is a centre finder. Now this is one of those times when this device comes in handy. I know a professional probably won't tell you to get one of these, but trust me, it's good. Line that up there. And there you go. Now also when I'm doing these sort of joints, or the splines, I do like to keep it more marked out in pencil first. Then I'll go and use a marking knife. Some people may say use a marking knife first, but I like to visualise it before you actually go to the final markings. Okay, so I think the ideal width of this spline is going to be 30 mil. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how to do this. Make a mark, get this fantastic tool. Okay, going back to the spline and the depth of it. So I think I said I was going to make about 3/4 of the block I've got. Now I'm not going to take the thickness down on this, you just leave it as it is, because when you trim it near the end it just self-rights itself. Okay, I'm adjusting the width. And you can see when I've actually had this glued up that it couldn't quite get it glued correctly, mainly because I've only done one side of what would have been, say, a box joint or a frame. Right, so I've got it all marked in pencil. Now to change that to marking knife and also the marking gauge. Right, I've got it in the vise, so now I'm just going to use a marking knife to mark out those lines. Of course, if you don't have a marking gauge, you could just mark that line like that, and then we'll flip it over. Okay, so we've got it all marked out. Now we need to use the saw to make some cuts. With this I'm just going to come in about 1 millimetre from there. Okay, so I've gone down past that line a little bit. Let's hope it's not going to be too bad. And now we'll do some more cuts. Now, we're going to chisel that away. I'm going to chisel the bulk of it away with a smaller chisel, because then hopefully this will keep this chisel sharp. And I learnt that from Mitre. Right, time to clean this up a little bit more. Okay, so now I've got this cut down to size, we have to see how it's going to fit in. Now I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove a bit off this side. So I'm happy with that fit. There is obviously still a little bit of a gap there. I'm not worried about this one, but you could just use the glue and sawdust trick later on. So next thing is to glue it up. And you'll have seen on my drawer unit that when I was gluing it up, I would still use blue tape all over the joint. Two reasons for that. One, it stops the excess glue running all over the place and it's easier to clean it up. Two, when we eventually come to cut the spline with the flush saw, it does prevent marking the wood on the actual joint. So that's why I do it. Now it's time to cut the spline, and we're going to do that with the flush saw. And as I mentioned before, this is a good thing about having the tape here, because it saves the actual wood underneath. Now I've just spotted something which isn't good. Okay, see that? I must not have got it all nice and flush on that side. Damn. See, this side actually looks pretty good. And all you would need to do after that is sand it down. So now there's that little gap, let's look at a way to try and repair it. First method I'm going to use is one of these wax sticks. Now I couldn't find the correct shade, but there is quite a bit of filling, so I'm going to use this for a little bit, and then we're going to try the sawdust with glue, but I'm not going to mix it into a paste. That is if I've got plenty of the sawdust spare. Awkward angle, so I'm going to leave that, and I'll clean that up a little bit. Right, for this I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue. And I've found I haven't got any Iroko sawdust, so the closest I've got is Sapili. Sprinkle it on and let that dry, and sometimes that can work better, I think, than the paste. So that doesn't look too bad. If it had been an actual project that I was working on, then I would have put blue tape down the sides and down here just to protect it. So one hand cut spline joint finished. I might actually use this more if I do some more photo frames. I'll probably just go to the hand cut version, get more practice in with it. You can of course still use the table saw or the router table to do the splines with a jig, but I would recommend having a go at hand cut. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm hoping this year to reach 1,000 subscribers now. Beginning of the year I said 500, I've surpassed that. I'm looking for 1,000, and then also to get enough watch hours to become monetized. Please help. And until the next time, Gan Canny Man.